Hello, and welcome to another episode of the CHSG History Podcast.
We're your hosts today. I'm Kalechi, this is Annabelle and Laxa.
Hi!
Today we are going to be taking a deep dive into the Titanic, the Mayans, Jane Seymour and more.
We hope you will enjoy our first segment on Simpson and the anaesthetic.
Welcome to today's section of the CHSG History Podcast. My name is Mia and I am joined here today by Mariam and Eliza to discuss an important figure in historical medical discoveries. I'm sure that the GCSE students with us will recognise this great man in the 19th century medicine, James Simpson. Can you introduce him to us, Mariam?
James Simpson was a Scottish midwife during the mid-1800s. He worked in anaesthetics to help patients, specifically women in labour, which was very different to how we view midwifery today.
At the time he graduated from the University of Edinburgh, ether was a common gas used to subdue patients and help with pain relief during surgery. However, it was not very effective as it was flammable and often patients suffered overdoses.
In addition, doctors would exclude labouring women from pain relief, as there was a long-held belief that pain was a punishment from God for Eve's sins.
So, it seems he has entered a medical field where patients were as likely to die on the operating table as they were to get better. So, what did he do that makes us remember him today?
This is the fun part. Simpson and a group of like-minded doctors met up regularly to look for alternatives to ether and to try and make medical discoveries. One day they were all gathered round Simpson's kitchen table, sniffing random chemicals and observing their effects, when they all fell unconscious after taking a strong inhalation of chloroform.
Simpson's wife found them all lying there asleep later, and when she awoke them, they realised the extent of their discovery, and they were all very excited.
Odd way to discover a chemical. But what did they actually do about their newly found use of chloroform? How was it useful to the midwives?
Simpson wanted to use it more as an efficient and safer version of ether, as the doses were easy to control and less likely to burst into flames.
He was actually quite successful when convincing people to switch to or use chloroform. One of the most influential pieces of propaganda he used was the fact that Queen Victoria used chloroform in the birth of her 8th child and strongly recommended the use for other women.
Impressive, but we haven't mentioned if this had a positive effect on the outcome of surgeries. Did chloroform have an impact on the mortality rate of patients in surgery?
In the short time, the use of chloroform had a negative effect on the mortality rate. When patients faced to be put to sleep for surgery, doctors would find it easier to do more invasive surgeries and spend longer on them. This meant the mortality rate went up, as patients died of blood loss more frequently, and unhygienic conditions meant infections were more often contracted. This period of an extreme low survival rate of surgery was known as the Black Period of surgery.
Oh no, how did we get it fixed then? We see Simpson as a medical genius today, but it seems he was a bit of a failure back then.
That is because we didn't yet have Joseph Lister, another wonderful medical practitioner from the 19th century. He started and popularised the use of antiseptics. This meant that patients were much safer from infection during surgery, lowering the mortality rates to 40% to less than 3% for broken leg operations by 1910. Without Lister's discovery, Simpson would have been a failure, as their work coupled together made surgery far safer.
Well, that's it for today. I hope you learned something about the wonderful medical age of the 19th century, and I hope this little throwback to GCSE history is appreciated. Thank you, Eliza and Mariam, for sharing this information with us today.
Interesting.
I had no clue about half of that.
If you thought that was interesting, you will love this segment on
The Mayans. Enjoy!
Hi, today we'll be discussing about the amazing Mayans with Parvina and Sarah.
Hi!
So, who were the Mayans?
The Mayans lived over 2,000 years ago in modern-day Central America in places like Mexico, Guatemala, Belize, El Salvador, and Honduras.
They were really technologically and mathematically advanced. They made their own writing using little pictures called hieroglyphs. They also invented the number 0. Imagine doing maths without 0. The Mayans were great at studying the stars. They made calendars that were super accurate. These helped them know when to plant crops and when to have special events.
Did they have a feudal system like the Normans?
The society was a hierarchy. It had a king at the top, then nobles and priests, and then common people who farmed and built cities.
The Mayans built huge pyramids and temples. Some are still standing today, like Temple Mayor. And they didn't even have machines. Around 900 AD, many Mayan cities were abandoned. Historians aren't sure why. It could have been because of wars, bad weather, or farming problems.
Did you know the Mayans never really went away? Millions of Mayan descendants are still alive today, keeping their culture and languages alive.
The Mayans also had some amazing food. Their main food was maize or corn, which they made into tortillas. They also grew chili, peppers, tomatoes, pumpkins, and sweet potatoes. They hunted animals like deer and armadillos. They caught fish, lobsters, and shrimps.
3 amazing facts on chocolate. The Mayans were the first people to grow cocoa, the plant used to make chocolate.
Cocoa was very special to them. They thought it was a gift from the gods. They even used cocoa beans like money. 1 cocoa bean could buy an avocado and 100 could buy a turkey.
Chocolate wasn't eaten like a bar back then. It was made into a spicy drink mixed with chili peppers and honey. Only rich people got to drink it.
Today, lots of Mayan foods are still popular, like tortillas, tamales, guacamole, and, of course, chocolate.
Even though Spanish invaders destroyed many Mayan cities in the 1600s, Mayan culture has survived for thousands of years.
That's all on the amazing Mayans. Bye!
I loved that segment.
And I think you'll love this one too.
It's on Jane Seymour. Enjoy. Hello and welcome back to the 5 things you didn't know about Henry VIII's wives. In today's episode we will be discussing Jane Seymour, the only one he truly loved.
Jane was the third wife of Henry VIII, in which their marriage lasted from May 1536 to October 1537.
Wait, if Henry loved her so much, how come she was never officially crowned queen?
Unfortunately, due to a deadly plague spreading through England as well as a series of revolts in the north during October 1536, Henry's priorities changed, so her coronation was cancelled and never rescheduled.
Because of this, she was never crowned as Queen Jane and instead remained Queen Consort until her death.
Unlike Henry's previous wives and the other 3 to come, Jane was the only wife to die during her marriage to Henry.
How old was she when she died?
Jane's age, like Anne Boleyn's, is unknown.
Her birth date is undocumented and she is suspected to have been born in either 1508 or 1509, meaning when she died she was either 28 or 29 years old.
Talking about her death, what was her funeral like?
Unlike Henry's previous wives, Catherine and Anne, Jane was the only wife to receive a royal funeral.
Told you she was the only one he truly loved.
But why did this happen?
Henry was heavily focused on his line of lineage, more specifically who would be the next monarch.
As Tudor society expected the next heir to be a male, Henry was desperate for this to happen, especially after Catherine and Anne both gave birth to daughters, Mary and Elizabeth, who would later become the future queens of England.
Henry's son Edward was born on the 12th of October 1537 and was crowned King Edward VI on the 20th of February 1547 at only 9 years old. But although she gave birth to a son, how was her relationship like with Mary and Elizabeth?
Not much is known about her relationship with Elizabeth, but we do know that she and Mary had a very good relationship with each other. Mary even considered Jane as a stepmother.
Why was this?
Mary hoped to reconciliate with her father and even be restored to the line of succession.
Did Jane have any influence over this?
When Henry died in January 1547, Mary was restored back into the will, so Jane might have had a potential influence over this.
Jane was also a Catholic during her marriage to Henry, which is surprising as England was still going through the English Reformation, meaning Henry was a Protestant and not tied to the Catholic Church.
The English Reformation was mentioned in more detail in one of our previous episodes on Anne Boleyn.
Unfortunately, that's all we have time for today.
I hope you enjoyed finding out 5 things you didn't know about Jane Seymour. Tune in for our next episode where you will discover 5 things you didn't know about Anne of Cleves.
Wow, that was interesting.
I didn't know anything they told us.
Well, you will enjoy the next section on the Titanic.
Listen carefully to all these facts and enjoy.
Welcome back to today's episode, which is the first of 3, talking about the Titanic. So, what was the Titanic?
The Titanic was a ship that set sail on the 10th of April 1912. It promised the passengers a safe and luxurious journey from Southampton in England to New York.
What happened to the Titanic?
On its journey to New York, the Titanic had a collision with an iceberg in the North Atlantic Ocean.
But how much did it cost to build the Titanic, considering the size of it?
It was roughly around £1.5 million, but in today's money it would be around £170 million. And it was constructed in Holland and Wolff in Belfast.
A lot of money was wasted on the construction of the Titanic.
Did you know that the Titanic was described as unsinkable?
Well, we can clearly tell that was false advertisement.
It is impossible for a ship that sunk in less than a week to be classified as unsinkable. It makes no sense.
I know, right? Anyways, what was the purpose of the Titanic?
Well, the Titanic was a mail and a passenger ship, which was used to accompany passengers with a range of different backgrounds, including British, Irish, and Scandinavian immigrants, as well as people from Hong Kong and Greater Syria boarded this very ship. But what made the ship so luxurious?
The Titanic was considered one of the most modern ships. It consisted of electric lights and heating in every room to keep the passengers nice and warm.
As well as this, they had a swimming pool, a squash court, electric elevators, a Turkish bath, and even a gymnasium.
But one of the most unique of them all was the fact that they had a mechanical horse and a camel, which they used to keep the passengers fit during their journey.
Did you know that the Titanic was the size of 9 blue whales?
No, I didn't. One interesting fact. Next time we will be talking about the journey of the Titanic in more detail.
See you next time.
Bye.
Well, I hope you enjoyed this segment and the episode.
Yep, that was our last segment for today.
I hope you enjoyed it.
Well, remember to like and subscribe and see you next time.
Bye!